If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another album review for you guys. And this week, we're going to kick off the weekend of August 11th with one I was curious to check out, considering I have never heard a full album from this band. I've heard songs in the past, but not a whole album, and that is Kataklysm with Goliath. So this came out on August 11th on Nuclear Blast Records, and well, short little history with this band for me. This has always been one of those death metal bands that has kind of escaped me. I don't know what it is about them that I just never really dove into head on until this new album. I mean, like, I'd heard the name all over the place, like in the Cannibal Corpse documentary. Of course, I know their history of being from Montreal and kind of being in kind of competition with Cryptopsy and other bands from that scene. And yeah, that was pretty much all I really knew. And I, of course, knew that they had some good records, but of course one of the things that kind of led me to not really checking this band out much is the quality control that I've heard from some fans. It's like they have like good album, bad, or like good album, meh album, good album, meh album. But I'm here to talk about Goliath and see how my first experience with a full album went. So, right away with Dark Wings of Conception, after a cool little sample, suddenly you get like brutal death metal on here, like almost like Slam a little bit. Now, of course, I'm not the biggest fan of Slam, primarily whenever bands just do nothing but breakdowns and don't really do anything else. At least here, it was brief and it was pretty noteworthy, pretty much. And even on top of this like slammy brutal death moment, you still get cool melodies, which that's another thing with Kataklysm that I know about, that after a certain point in their catalog they went down more melodic death metal, more in the vein of bands like Hypocrisy, especially Amon Amarth and At the Gates. And I kind of get glimmers of that whenever these melodies pop up here at the beginning of Dark Wings of Conception. And then one thing that comes in little by little on this album is dissonant melodies. Like Dark Wings of Conception was really the first track to kind of bring in like a dissonant melody, and then Bringer of Vengeance, it has a dissonant melody, but it's clean, it's not with distortion. And then even the song The Redeemer has some more chuggy dissonant riffs. So that was really, those were really the only tracks where you get like any hint of dissonance within the songs. But one thing that becomes pretty apparent when like a big trope of the album is that either like towards the middle end of the song or even at the very end of songs, it ends on a more thrash metal note, like kind of like that Gothenburg melodic death metal style of thrashy speed and riffs and such. Like the title track Goliath, you get more of like that thrashiness towards the middle, whereas Dark Wings of Conception, it was more towards the end. Die as a King, however, that song definitely has a lot of At the Gates worship. It starts off with this big blast beat, which the Hyper Blast, which some people say Kataklysm invented it, and you get a big blast beat and riffs right away in Die as a King, and then it turns into more of a straight up Gothenburg melodic death metal song, very much in the vein of At the Gates. Now, another thing that comes in little by little throughout is when they go double time, like that kind of Amon Amarth, bolt thrower type of double time, like in the title track Goliath, it starts off that way. Then Bringer of Vengeance gets into some double time stomps, and even Gravestones and Coffins has a cool double time moment. And I'll talk more about it when I get to the final track. But Bringer of Vengeance does kind of start a bit of a trend downward on the album for me, because the first three tracks, wildly different, and they were all really, really good. Bringer of Vengeance, what the fuck is happening to me? Bringer of Vengeance brings in some like more syncopated chugs and rhythms, kind of like Meshuggah a little bit, and it was cool. But again, I'm not the world's biggest Meshuggah fan, so that's pretty much it with that. Combustion. Now, this was one of the songs where it just felt like they didn't really go too many places. This song felt like one big, gigantic breakdown, but the riff work is pretty strong. It just feels like they just kind of stayed in this, like, chugging groove and didn't really go anywhere else until the end, when they get into more of that, like, thrashy territory. From the land of the living and the land, or from the land of the living to the land of the dead, the hyperblast comes in right away, fast riffs, even some really cool melodic riffs kind of return after a couple of tracks of not really having a whole lot of melodic riff work. Ends again on a more thrashy note. The Redeemer. Now, this song, I remembered watching Thralls of Metal review this album before I checked it out, and this was like one of those songs where could have benefited with like a nice guitar solo. You don't get really any solos at all until the final track, The Sacrifice for Truth, but Redeemer brings in, like, again, the chuggy dissonant riffs, but very melodic, kind of like Hypocrisy. And then get this somber, clean melody at the beginning, and the drums build tension. And even some clever melodies going on towards the end that leads into the thrashy end of the album, or not the album, the song. But could have benefited with having a guitar solo. Heroes to Villains, this one felt the most triumphant of all the songs. This was like the most mellow death song of the entire album, and tastefully done with chugs. Gravestones and Coffins, chugs, melodies, but this was more groove-oriented, double time, and even the breakdown gets melodic. But The Sacrifice for Truth, the closing track, kind of mixes everything this album had into one song. Double time, melodies, chugs, groove, even a bass melody, which was really cool, and a guitar solo. And it was more of like an atmospheric solo rather than shred, but there's a clean melody on top of it all. So yeah, those were pretty much all the songs. Now, as far as like the issues, yeah, there could have been some guitar solos on the bridges, because, yeah, I will agree with the Thralls guys. A lot of the bridges on these songs felt a little bit empty without some kind of lead. And then some of the songs got pretty formulaic, like they would just rely on chugs throughout, like, the early to the middle parts of the song and then end on a thrashy note. And that trope does repeat quite a bit on here, so it does kind of wane on you a little bit when you thought they could have gotten a little bit more creative with song structures and how to start and end the songs. But the riffs on this album were pretty damn good. Like, the riffs pretty much made those songs still feel interesting, because they would always be different. Like, it could be more chugging, it could be more melodic, it could be more thrashy. Like, they're always able to change up the riffs. It's just the way the songs get put together, with the idea of, like, let's chug here and then we'll end on a thrash note, maybe squeeze in a melody. It does kind of labor on you a little bit, but other than those complaints, like, for the most part, this album was pretty solid. Like, the opening 3 tracks all provided something different, and it was really cool. And then it ends with a great closer with The Sacrifice for Truth. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. I thought this was a pretty solid, pretty decent album, good album. Definitely could go back and check out some of the more classic albums like Shadows and Dust, Sorcery, Temple of Knowledge, and kind of get more of an idea about this band. But from what I heard with this new album, it's fine. But that's just my opinion. What did you guys think of Goliath by Kataklysm? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.